Okay. Hello, how's everybody doing? Give me 1 minute here and I'll get ready to go. If you are watching on YouTube or Zoom, just put your questions in the chat box on either channel. I will find it and I will answer it. Whatever your questions are, just pop them in there and I will be happy to answer them. So let's get started. And let's see what we got for my first question. So let's just get right to it. And how do I value my business for investors? I'm not sure how much equity I should give them. Okay, well, that is the backwards way to think about things. And I know we all think about it this way, but the reality is there is a market out there, just like in any market. There are buyers and sellers. You are selling something when you raise money. So when we sell something, when we raise money, that means we're giving away equity, right? In return for cash to be able to run our business. That's the trade. It's a pretty straightforward trade. So the reality is that the market, the investors are going to determine the value of the company. Now, obviously, you have to agree to it, but you can't just arbitrarily set a value and say, I'm going to give up. For example, let's say we're raising $100,000. A typical amount you might give up, which is a different question, might be like 10% of the company or something like that. Okay, that's fine. But the buyers may not agree with you. That's the point. The market sets the value. If the market, the buyers do not agree to your price, it doesn't matter what your price is, you are not going to be able to get what you want. So that's kind of like the word to the wise here. And for valuation methods, I mean, there are all sorts of nutty valuation methods. I did a video on this a couple of years ago, and you can find it on my YouTube channel where I talk about valuation methods. None of them matter. None of them are going to convince an investor that your company is worth whatever you think it's worth, because investors are going to look at it differently. The market determines the value. So the market is the investors. Typically, what I would tell you is, especially for early stage investments, and I think most of the people that are watching this are probably early stage CEOs, I would imagine. Typically what happens, we give up a small, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there. So typically, for early stage deals, it's a very mechanical thing. There's a certain percentage that investors want to own. And therefore, because they want to own a certain percentage, then they will give up a certain amount of, they want a certain amount of equity. And that's kind of the way it works. So it's like if we're raising like a smaller amount of money, like $100,000 or something like that, typically you give up about 10%. That might be for your friends and family. And then as you start raising larger amounts of money, suddenly, depending upon the amount, you might give up anywhere from like 15 to 30%, depending on the round size. And then when your company becomes really big, suddenly the percentages go down, and you may raise, if you're raising $100 million and your company's worth $1 billion, well, you're not going to give up 20% to go raise another 100 million, right? Because then suddenly you've just cut your valuation in half. So that doesn't make sense. So the valuations will change as your company goes on. But anyways, the thought process of giving a valuation and expecting investors to just accept it, that doesn't work. The exception to this, I would say, is when we're dealing with a friends and family, unsophisticated people, then you can set a valuation. Even there, people have to agree. But you would typically do that for a smaller round where maybe you're going to pass the hat and people are going to give you write smaller checks, and they're going to give you whatever money they can because they're your friends and they're your family. That's where it changes. So hopefully that helps. Let's go to our next question. Okay, and this is a unclear question to me. It says, this is in my Zoom audience. By the way, the Zoom people who are members of our free group Zero to Pitch, they get priority. So I'm always going to answer their questions first. And this says pre-seed, pre-revenue financial forecast. How in depth? Okay, I think I understand it. So if we're trying to forecast something and we don't have any revenue, don't have any customers, what do we do? And how in depth should we be? Well, it's just like anything else. You take your best estimate, and as you get more sophisticated, you'll get better at this. But you want to forecast your business. Even if you don't have revenue, even if you don't have customers, just take a shot at it. And ideally, what I would do is I would say, okay, how many customers do I think I'm going to have? Ideally, I would do it by month. I know it's a pain in the rear end, but kind of think it through, because the more detailed you get, the better off you're going to be. But ideally, I would do it by month. Now I'm going to get to the answer, what are we going to show investors, in just a second. But I would try and do a monthly forecast. And then I would be updating it every month as I got smarter. And I learned more about this. So I would update it. I would try and do this, at least a monthly forecast for probably the next 2 to 3 years. And then I would probably have yearly forecasts for years 4 and 5. But you want to kind of show a 5-year forecast to investors, but at least monthly, so you can kind of see what's happening. And you want to gauge how you're doing. There's a tool called Waterfall Charts, which is kind of a nice tool. When you start having board meetings with real investors on your board, you'll want to show them waterfall charts of a whole bunch of different things, including your forecast, because it's nice to kind of see how you're doing over time. I did a video on this as well, which you can find on my YouTube channel. But yeah, you'd want to do it. And so I would want to do, okay, how many customers do I think I'm going to have each month? What do I think they're going to pay me? Then it's X times Y. That gives me how much revenue I'm going to get. And I want to forecast this as best I can. And then how much is it going to cost me to have this revenue? So do your best, take a shot at it. Everybody understands you're not going to be perfect, and that's cool. And then do it again, and then do it again. Okay, let's go to my next question. It's a long question. As a founder, this is again from my Zoom audience. Eventually, I'll get to the YouTube people in just a minute or two. As a founder myself, it's my dream to one day raise my first round of funding from Y Combinator. Okay. I haven't even launched my startup page publicly yet, but because I want to do everything with precision and perfection, okay? But like every founder in the early stage, I'm facing many problems. Okay, my question is simple. How hard is it to really get into Y Combinator as a non-native English speaker and a solo founder who's still learning and growing? It's very hard. Let me just stop there, and then I'll answer the rest of your questions. But it's really, even if you're an English speaker, it's really hard. I think their acceptance rates, and don't quote me on this, but you can probably find it in a quick Google search or whatever, they're less than 10%. They may be less than 5%. They may be even lower than that. It's not an easy program to get into. And by the way, if you don't get into Y Combinator, it does not necessarily mean you have a bad startup. They're just very picky about what they do because they're the best of the best. They have a really good program. I think the people there, at least the people that I'm aware of there, are really good. They know what they're doing. So they have the ability and the luxury to be very selective in terms of who they bring in. I don't know what their criterion is, but I think you got to have your stuff together. And you're already mentioning you're a solo founder. I don't know what you're doing, but if you're a solo founder, over time, you're going to need a team. So the best solo founders are the solo founders that are still trying to find founders, if that makes sense. So you want to always be looking for founders too. So last piece of this person's questions, I'm fully committed to improving my English and building something meaningful. Okay, good for you. I just want to understand the real path and how difficult it is for someone like me. As I said, it's very difficult to get into Y Combinator. Even if you were an English speaker here in the States, it's still difficult. It's very hard. It doesn't mean that this is the only path for you. There are other paths. Remember that. Okay, let's go to our next question. By the way, if you have questions for me, if you're watching on Zoom, put your questions in the chat box there. If you're watching on YouTube, put the questions in the chat box there, and I will be happy to answer them in either place. Next question. What to expect on a first meeting with someone that connects you with investors? Okay. I'm trying to understand what you're getting at here, but it seems like what you're trying to tell me is that you have somebody who's going to introduce you, and I'm going to just read into this. This person is probably looking for a fee to introduce you to people, to introduce you to investors. Well, the first thing I would tell you is be really careful, because most of these people are just going to steal your money. Just remember that. So it's very difficult, to go that route and not be ripped off, is what I would tell you. So be really careful. And personally, I would do my own research and I would try and figure it out myself. You'll find that you have a bigger group of people that you know than you think. There are many tools out there that you can use to build up a list. My favorite is Crunchbase. Every few months or so, I do a webinar on this. If you're a member of the Zero to Pitch audience, if you sign up for Zero to Pitch, my free group or my paid group, you'll get a lot of this material already. And I'll be doing a webinar on Zero to Pitch next month, I believe, on this exact subject, not this month, but next month. So join Zero to Pitch and I'll teach you how to do it. And I'll teach you how to build up a list, how to reach out to investors, how to do the dreaded cold email, and how to make the most of the contacts you have. But I don't like this route personally. I think it's a bad route to go. Most people just get ripped off and they get nothing and they just lose money. So my answer is do walk away from this. Don't talk to them because you're probably going to throw your money away. Sorry. Next question. This is a long story here. Just telling me your history back in school. I'm waiting for the question here. Now many of my cousins have gone too far. Some are doctors, PhDs, others in big positions. But even though I don't have any big achievements yet, I feel like I think bigger than all of them. My mindset is at another level. I dream of building a startup, something that could be worth $800 million one day. Okay. So I want to ask you honestly, does success depend upon your education? No. Look at Steve Jobs. He didn't graduate from college. Your background? No, there are plenty of people that come from all sorts of different backgrounds that are very successful from every continent on this planet, probably excepting Antarctica. So no matter where you are in the world, you can be successful. So having said that, I know that, especially here in the United States, we have many advantages that people listening to this around the world do not have. And I'm not saying that it isn't hard for people depending upon where they are, but people sometimes can be fortunate enough to overcome all these obstacles and succeed. That's what I am saying. Okay, let's see what the rest of your question. Does it matter how you dress? Well, at some level, no, it doesn't. But present yourself as best you can would be my advice. Or does it really depend upon the size of your mindset? What matters the most? As I said, I am not naive to believe that people here don't have huge advantages. And when I look at myself, I can certainly say all of those things. I was fortunate to be born in the United States, born into not huge wealth, but certainly upper middle class, I would imagine, was my upbringing. Supportive parents, the expectation of going to college, all these things put me in a good place. Living in California put me in a good place. Moving to the Silicon Valley put me in a better place, in terms of wanting to be involved in startups and entrepreneurship. So this all gives me advantages that many other people didn't have, certainly. However, you meet people, especially in my world, I have met people from all over the world who've been successful. And when you look at, since we're talking about this in the United States, I'm not sure the exact numbers, but I believe it's around at least 50% of all startups are started by people who were not born in this country, which is a pretty amazing statistic. Let's hope it stays that way with the current government. But regardless, I mean, it's an incredible achievement, that people can come here from very modest beginnings and succeed and build businesses. And they're the lifeblood and the engine of our economy, are people like that. So yeah, you can absolutely do it. It's hard to do, but it's doable, would be what I would tell you. Okay, let's go to the next question on our list. If you have questions for me, just pop them into the chat box on Zoom or YouTube, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. So let's go to our next question. My idea involves making an app, but I don't have technical expertise and cannot put in that money into it. How should I go about it? Okay, well, you're going to obviously need somebody to help you technically. You're going to need money to help you start. And it's very unlikely at this stage with an app can mean millions of different things, but it's very unlikely that some investor is going to write you checks. So what do? You do what people have done forever. They find a way. You're going to have to find somebody to help you on the technology side. And they are going to have to believe in your vision. So you're going to convince people to work with you, and many of them for free, essentially, because you're not going to have the money, to be able to pay them anything. So they're going to have to totally believe in what you're doing. They're going to be your co-founders. So that's part of this. You have to find a co-founder or co-founders that are going to be able to help you. All these things are what you're going to have to do. And you're going to have to convince people. And then you're going to have to convince your friends and your family and cobble together whatever money you can to get started and start from there. This is what people have done forever. And you're going to have to do the exact same thing. There are no shortcuts. It is the way it is. This is the way people start. I think you have a follow-up question, which I'm going to get to next, which I saw VC in there. So I'm anticipating something about venture capitalists helping you. And I think the answer is they're not going to help you at this point. And I don't want to mislead you and I don't want to lie to you. It's going to be on you and your ingenuity and creativity to figure a way. So let's go to your next question. Also, I do think raising VC money just adds to the pressure and is not a good thing for an early stage company. Okay, well, so you're not expecting to raise VC money. I agree with that. You're not ready to. The thing about raising money from investors is if it's the only way you can get from point A to point B, then you have to raise money from investors. Investors are kind of a necessary evil. If you don't need them, don't bring them on. That would be my advice to anybody. But if you need them, like we did, because we had a very high capital intensity business we were building, we had to have investors. We couldn't get off the ground without investors. So that was the challenge that we had when we were starting our company. And, many people are like that. It just depends upon what you're doing. But the beautiful thing, especially on the software side of things, is you can start without that, just as you're saying, which makes things a little bit easier. And that's another way to go. All right, let's get to our next question. Back to my Zoom feed. Honestly, I really don't think like Shark Tank. Okay. Really don't like Shark Tank. Okay, that's fine. Shark Tank isn't real. It's a television show. The way they focus on equity and deals, it just feels off to me. I would agree. It's a television show. It's all about taking a piece of your company, negotiating hard, and sometimes even humiliating founders. I don't connect with that at all. Okay. On the other hand, I've watched tons of interviews with real VCs, the kind who really listen, ask thoughtful questions, and try to understand the founder's journey and obsession. I watched some 50-minute Y Combinator videos where partners showed how they do interviews. I noticed they fire questions one after the other, quick, sharp, deep, but it's not random. They're trying to understand, okay, I'm waiting for the question here. How deep do you really understand your startup? Are you fanatical enough to build it? I love that. That's the kind of place I want to be, not just get funding, but to be in a community where people actually get it. My English isn't perfect. I'm still learning, but okay. All right, there was no question there. Okay, thank you for sharing that. Okay, let's go to the next question on our list. If you have questions for me and you're watching on Zoom, you can put them in the chat box. If you're watching on YouTube, you can put them in the chat box as well. And some people are giving me Q&A questions also. All right, same question. Just answered. All right, there we go. Okay, so let's go to the next question that we have. Also, everyone has this question. How is your startup idea different? I don't think you can have an idea that is already not there. Okay, here's what I think they're asking. So there's a difference between that and what you're pointing out. So let me explain the difference. So let's say we're building I don't know, so I'm working with somebody who's doing quantum computing, for example. So, and if you do research on quantum computing, there are a lot of people in that world right now. So it's a fairly hot spot. What they're asking is what's different about your approach compared to what other people are different. This is a key question for investors. I just did a video on this a few weeks ago on this specific question. This is a key question for investors, and it's really important. So don't poo-poo this question. Don't ignore this question. It is the critical kind of like culminating question. So if you look at a slide deck, we start off, we have a cover slide, we have a problem slide, we have a solution slide, and then we have the how it works slide. So we explain, hey, we're explaining there's this problem we're solving, there's deep pain in the world, in our customers, and they need this problem solved. Then we have the solution to it. It does this, this, and this. Okay, great. You've told us that, but that's all on paper. Now comes the key, which is the how it works slide. What's that about? Well, how it works is really not how it works, but how it works, which means what's unique about the way you're approaching your solution. That's what investors are asking you. So you have to understand how to answer that question. That's the key. That's why they're saying different. That's what they're really after. It isn't that it's a different problem you're trying to solve, it's how you're trying to solve the problem. That's the differentiation. And investors are obsessed with this, and for good reason. Because they understand that if you have a different approach, you may have a novel, groundbreaking approach that may be really disruptive to an industry, and it may be very defensible, may be very hard for other people to do, and that's what people are looking for. They're looking for something that could stand the test of time. That's why they're asking the question. So I hope that helps. Okay, let's go back to my Zoom feed. What do you think about Shark Tank? I think it's great television, or was at one point. I guess it's still on. I respect Mark Cuban. I think he's a pretty smart guy. But it's television. It's not what investing is. And I think it does a lot of harm for people, because there are a lot of people out there that think, oh, this is how you raise money. And it's not. It's just television. It's set up for television. So they don't do things like they do in real life, because it's not real life. It's set up for television. That's what I think of Shark Tank. So approach it as television. It's not real. Okay, so let's take a quick break here so I can drink some water. And if you're interested, you like what you're hearing here, you want to take it up another level, you want to work with me at a more detailed level, you want to actually converse with me and talk to me rather than this kind of one-way conversation we're having today. The way you can do that is right over my left shoulder. There is a QR code for Zero to Pitch Gold. Is my paid group for startup CEOs. Costs all of $150 a month. And you get daily office hours with me. You get courses taught by me. and you get a community of other like-minded CEOs that you can work with as well. It's a tremendous value. Get about $20,000 worth of value for all of $150 a month. Great deal. So sign up, and all you have to do is just see that QR code over my left shoulder. Just sign up there. Okay, let's go to our next question. I have the LLC formed, the pitch deck made, the marketing strategy made. What's the next step? Well, if you're trying to raise money from investors like, let's say, angel investors or venture capitalists, then you need to go. This is going to bum you out, but you need to go from an LLC to C Corp, preferably based in Delaware. So it's great that you have an LLC, bully for you, but at some point, if you're going to get investors, real investors, then you're going to need to change the company. If you're going to give stock options to people, then it's harder to do that with the format of an LLC than it is a C Corp. So that's your next step. Now, hopefully, if you're saying you had your pitch deck made, I don't know what else that encompasses, but imagine you have an idea for your business. Usually in today's world, let's say you have your C Corp. Okay, so you're incorporated properly, all of that. Usually in today's world, it is very, very difficult, extremely difficult to raise money based on a pitch deck. It's been done. I did it. I know other people that have done it, but it's really hard. So I'm going to assume in your particular case, but I could be assuming incorrectly, that you're going to be one of these people who's going to be really hard for it. It doesn't mean you're bad. It just means it's very difficult to do it. So what do you do? So it means probably great, you have a pitch deck, but it's hard to raise money at this point. So just like I was talking about earlier today, how are we going to go raise money? We're going to get money from our friends, our family, and our bank accounts to get started. That's kind of like the first thing we're going to do. So that's the first challenge, is you're going to have to get money from these people. Okay. And then we're going to have to get as far as we can, probably, because we're not going to be investable outside of that piece, to start proving that we have something. Investing is about risk reduction. So we've got to reduce the risk before we're going to entice investors to invest in our business. So we've got to reduce the risk. How are we going to do that? We've got to start proving things. We've got to start building a team. We've got to prove that we can recruit people. We've got to prove that we can execute. So these are things we have to do to be able to go to the next stage of this. So that's what you're going to have to do as well. So great, you have the pitch deck. Great, you're an LLC, but now, as I said, you're going to have to start executing. And that's going to get you to the point where maybe, just maybe, you can raise larger sums of money if that's your plan. Many companies never raise any money. They just bootstrap the whole way, which is the other way to go. And there's nothing wrong with that. So you have to figure out what the right path is for you, but you have to start being able to execute, get out to market, start selling, building a team, all those types of things. Okay, let's go to our next question. I have 2 mobile apps that earn roughly 60 to 80K ARR, okay? These are photo editing applications, and I started them as side projects, but now I'm trying to transform them into something bigger. Okay, I aim to create an ecosystem of multiple apps that serve various purposes for users. A long question. And at the same time, I built a search ads AI agent. Wow, this is a lot of questions here. And based on that technology, I want to offer B2B services for small businesses like mine. But I'm confused how to represent them in a pitch properly. Yeah, I can see why. You got a lot going on. Because all decks are made for products that solve a specific problem, but I have multiple products. One of them earning money, one of them can potentially be really scalable. What do you do in my case? Well, interestingly enough, in my particular case, we were a multiple product business, but we kind of had an umbrella. We were essentially high-end analog semiconductors, but that business is not a one product business. If you think about different areas of different businesses, ours, the model was multiple products to be able to do what we needed to do to be able to build out the company and be successful. So how do we present ourselves? You've got to present kind of the vision of where you're going. In other words, our vision is to do this, whatever the change the world thing is. And here's how we're going to get there. So we're going to get there by doing this app, then this app, then this app, then this app, then this app. And that's our way of getting to this vision of doing this thing. And you have to sell the vision. So a great example of this is, again, whatever we think of this person, let's ignore that, but is Elon Musk with SpaceX. His vision basically was, I want to go to Mars, and that's going to take a long time. And this was back in, I think, 2000 or so when he started the company. And here we are 25 years later. And guess what? Old Elon, he hasn't gotten to Mars yet. But I think there was kind of this subtle thing in there, which was, hey, the vision is to go to Mars, but we're going to do all these intermediate things, which are going to help us get there. And we're going to sell things along the way to reduce your risk and for us to make a ton of money and increase the value of the business, which is exactly what he did. Sell the vision. That's what you want to do. That's the way you present yourself to potential investors. It's very hard in this particular medium when it's a broadcast kind of medium where I'm broadcasting to you and you guys are asking me written questions to delve in deep about what you're specifically doing. But that's what I would do. Sell the vision. I've done videos on this as well. Okay. Do we have any other questions? If we have questions for me, put them in the chat box on Zoom or YouTube. And I'm going to look myself to see if we've got any other questions. Okay, here's a good question. Do investors really add value beyond money? There is this myth of what is called smart money. You will hear this all the time, especially as you start migrating into the world of venture capital, where people say we're smart money. And we help you, we give you all this guidance and support and help beyond the money. And that's our big thing that we're going to do. And you will find that most of that is garbage. I remember when I was first starting to raise money and I was having a conversation with my dad. And my dad, years prior to me, had raised money for his company. And I remember sitting there spouting off to him and saying, oh, we're just going to raise money from tier one VCs, blah, blah, blah. And my dad started laughing at me and he just looked at me and he smiled and he said, Brett, everybody's money is green. And my dad was right. The first goal when we are raising money is to raise money. It is not to raise money from quote unquote, tier one VCs. It is to raise the money. It's hard enough. Understand that the odds are really against you being able to raise money from investors. It's about 100 to 1. For every 100 face-to-face meetings an investor will take, either by Zoom or in person, they'll invest in one business. So it's not easy. That's the point. And it's not supposed to be easy. The bar is really high. So first off, be able to raise the money. And then what's a good investor versus a bad investor versus an okay investor or a great investor? Let's put them in great, good, and bad. And we want to avoid the bad ones. The bad ones are the ones that, first off, don't invest in the next round of your business, which happens all the time, by the way. So you're looking for supportive investors who are going to be there and are going to write you the next check and aren't going to disrupt your business. So sometimes when we ask for help, the help we get either directly or indirectly from investors can be just disastrous. So don't expect to have great help from investors. You may not get it. And in all likelihood, you won't. That's kind of my point. So you're so in fact, most investors' help, in my experience, isn't that great. So what are we looking for? We're looking for support. That's a good investor. A good investor continues to write checks for your business if you're executing. That's a good investor. So if you get a good investor, you're already ahead of the game. A great investor is one that's going to give you really good guidance and support beyond the check writing. But that is maybe 10% of all investors, something like that, 10 to 20% of all investors. It's a small number. Most investors are not like this. So remember, if you can just raise the money, that's a good investor. And if that investor continues to write checks, bully for that investor. That's really good. Bad investors, those are the ones that you want to avoid, the ones that make your company uninvestable, that are disruptive or problematic, cause problems, do all sorts of stupid things. Those are the ones that you want to avoid. That's another 20% of the universe. So if you avoid the bad ones, you're probably ahead of the game. Okay, if we have questions, put them in the chat box on Zoom or YouTube. And let me answer my next question, which is from our Zoom audience. How much chance of getting funded by an angel investor out of 100? It's about the same, interesting enough. It's about 1 in 100 for angels as well. So it is not easy to play this game. That's kind of the point. And it makes me wonder about, the person who asked me about Y Combinator before. What are the percentages there? And it makes me wonder whether it's even 4%. It might be even lower. It's probably lower. It's not easy, is the point. It's not easy to get into these programs. It's not easy to get an investor to give you money. It's hard because if you think about it, you're competing against not just people in your space, you're competing against all these other areas that an investor might be interested in, maybe peripheral areas to you. And you have to somehow or other shine above everybody else and stand out from everybody else. The bar is unbelievably high. That's the point. Okay, if we have any questions, put them in the chat box on Zoom or YouTube. Let me see if I've got any more questions. Okay, this is a good question. Should you send your pitch deck to investors? And I think the brunt of this question is if you have cold emails. If you're doing a cold email, should you send your pitch deck to investors? My view on this has kind of changed over time, I would tell you. And it has gone from being let them ask to now I'd probably just put it as an attachment in the cold email. You want to do this as a PDF, by the way. Don't send PowerPoints, don't send keynotes or Canvas, and don't try these stupid things where you're trying to encode it and see whether they look at the deck and all that kind of stuff. It just gets in the way. Make it easy. Friction in deals makes deals harder to do. We want to make things super easy. So think about that. But yeah, I would absolutely do that. Make it super easy. And then if you're looking for more guidance on cold emails, I've done videos on that as well. You can find them on my YouTube channel about how to do this. You want to be short and to the point. Because again, if something's in your inbox, investors maybe I get these all the time from people. And the long ones, forget it. I'm not going to read them. But the short ones that are quick and to the point, I'll read them really quickly. And I'll maybe give it 10 or 15 seconds. And I think investors are probably pretty similar to that. That's the point. So get right to it when you're doing these things. The headline is obviously the most important thing because if they don't open the email, they can't read the body of the email. And then we've just got to make it really precise what we're about, why we're better. And then the ask is also really important. Don't over ask. And by don't over ask, don't ask for a meeting, interestingly enough. A meeting, if you think about it, you send me an email, and I just got one like this yesterday, interesting enough. Somebody says, hey, I'm in town. You want to have lunch with me? No, no, I don't want to have lunch with you. It's too soon to have lunch with you. I don't even know you. So you have to think hard about your ask. Your ask is really for them to really just get back to you if they're interested. And that is a very simple thing, like saying something like this. Let me know how you'd like to proceed. That's it. And if they don't respond, okay, that's told you they're not interested. If they respond with a no, that's fine. If they say, hey, why don't we set up a meeting? Fantastic. Believe me, if what you have is interesting, they'll respond. Okay, next question. This is again from my Zoom audience, which means this is the part of my free group, Zero to Pitch. You can join that. There's a link on my YouTube channel for that if you're interested. And if you're interested in taking it up a notch from that QR code over my left shoulder, Zero to Pitch Gold, all of $150 a month. Huge value, about $20,000 of value for $150 a month. Can't beat it. You can quit anytime you want. Totally up to you what you do. But anyways, there's videos on that page when you get there, which you can watch and get more detail about it. There are testimonials there, all sorts of good stuff. So let's go to the next question. Why is it hard to get funded? Because of our pitch deck, our DR market, a problem, or common problems. It's hard to get funded because, as I said earlier, the competition is extreme. That's the answer. You can't be like everybody else and get funded. You have to be really, really good and you have to stand out. And if you don't stand out, you're not going to raise money. Full stop. It is meant to be hard. It should be hard. Okay, let's go to our next question. Give me 1 second here. What do you think about critical thinking founders as an investor's view? That's pretty broad. I think I would want people to be thinking critically about their businesses. So sure, I think that's a good thing. Okay, if we have any other questions, put them in the chat box on Zoom or YouTube. And if we don't, we'll call it a day, a little bit early, but it's midsummer. I'll tell you what, while I'm waiting for another question, I will tell you, it feels like summer, at least if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. I know there are people watching this who are in the Southern Hemisphere, but it feels like a lot of people are on holiday this week in the Northern Hemisphere. Just in terms of business dealings, just in terms of things I do. Even my wife and I did this hike. It's called the Dish Hike this morning around Stanford University. Depending upon the route you go, our route was about 5.5 miles. It's not 5.5 hours. So about 5.5 miles, and there's barely anybody on this hike. It's a real pretty hike too, and there's barely anybody out compared to normally at that time of day. So it just feels to me like people are on vacation for what it's worth. So, and as I sit here and listen, it looks like, and just went through that story with you, looks like we don't have any other questions. So we'll call it a day. Thank you all very much. Again, if you're interested in joining my paid group, Zero to Pitch Gold, scan that QR code, learn some more about it, read the testimonials, watch the videos, the video testimonials as well about what it's like to work with me. And again, $150 a month, quit anytime you want. It's $20,000 of value. It's insane value for people. So with that, thanks so much. Take care, everybody. Bye.